Hi, everyone. Welcome to Product Makers, where we dive into the world of product development and innovation. Interviewing industry experts and successful product leaders and makers, each episode explores the strategies, challenges, and insights behind the creation of popular products and services. In this episode, we're super excited to bring on Courtney Arnott, Director of Product at 120Water. Courtney, it's great to have you. How are you doing?
You're good. Thanks so much for having me on today, Justin. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Us as well. Why don't we first start by, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at 120 Water.
Yeah. So I am a product management veteran. I have been working in product management for about 10 years, all over the place with different startups and helping them take their ideas from the scrappy startup mode into more scale up mode. So, really working in that from customer one to customer 100 and then beyond kind of area is really my expertise. Particularly at 120 Water, I'm the director of product and solutions. And so that really means that I'm owning the strategic vision of our platform and making sure that I'm helping to enable our team to follow along with our leadership's goals, right? So looking at, what we're working on and making sure that it's aligned with our journey and where we're trying to go, and then enabling the team on what we need to do to get to those different milestones on our journey. But the good thing about 120 Water is so we are actually more than just software, which is a new thing in my career. Our platform actually makes up three different portions that makes the full platform. So we have the software platform, which has 6 different software applications in the suite. We also have physical products. So thinking like Brita pitchers and Brita filters and physical sampling kits that we can send in the mail to folks to collect their water and tell them what the contaminant levels are in their water from their house. And then the third item is actually people, so services, and allowing our experts to help water systems to get their data cleaned up into the right place. That way, everybody can have healthy drinking water across the nation. So we have a small but mighty team. We're growing like crazy. I work hand in hand with the vice president of engineering to, really shore up our roadmap, shore up our expectations, and drive those initiatives forward with the help of our small but mighty team.
That's really cool. Yeah, definitely love the mission. And obviously, water is very critical and important, especially when it comes to making sure that it's clean and drinkable and sanitized. I love also what you've mentioned about how I think a lot of companies are very much focused around the entire experience, and that includes software, that includes the physical product as well as services. So really cool to see that have experience in working with all of those. I'm sure there's a lot of different challenges and things that you're working on today.
Yeah, you got it. The biggest one is really just looking at how do we move from a services heavy company into more of a product company, which I'm sure is not a unique problem, but definitely one that we're facing right now.
Definitely. And so, can you talk a little bit more about just the mission of 120 Water and how does your role contribute to the mission of the company?
Yeah, so I love to talk about our mission and tell the story of our founder, Megan Glover. So back in 2012, when Flint, Michigan had the big crisis with their lead lines in their system, Megan was a marketing executive in Indianapolis, and she just had the question of how do I find out if my water in my home is safe for my kids? And she went through some investigation to find out that there was not a simple way to send somebody a sample of your water and see if there's lead or other dangerous contaminants in it that could be affecting your health of your family. So she went forth and she actually created the first one of a kind single use sample for consumers like you and me. So you can actually order a single bottle to be shipped to your home, fill it up and send it to one of our lab partners for anywhere in the country. And they're able to collect that sample, run it through their sampling process and tell you exactly what's in that water. And that was the start of it all, right? So being able to say, hey, do we have safe water for our public or do we not? And from there, we also started to identify that drinking water in general as a whole industry is technologically very behind. These folks are people who, working at these water systems, right? So I live in Indianapolis and my water system is Citizens Energy Group. So the folks that usually work at these water systems, there's usually between like 2 and 5 of them serving between 1,000 and 10,000 end folks. So there's a lot of things for them, not a lot of time for them to do it, right? And so we ended up building in as well of how do we use our experts in the water system that work at 120 Water to help bring some more value to those water systems so that they can provide better end quality water for their consumers like you and me. And then lastly, what we're working on is water compliance. So we all know that lead is bad, and good news, the government is very much in agreement with that. And ever since 1988, when the nationwide lead ban happened, there have been different initiatives across the nation to take action and remove dangerous contaminants from the ground, from the buildings that we drink water from, all over the place where there might be, lead pipes, frankly. So what we're working on is more helping our water systems be compliant with those programs so that the water that they're delivering at the end of the day to consumers like you and me is as healthy and as clean as possible. So that's a big initiative that the government has called LCRR. And long story short, every single water system in the nation is required to do what they're calling an inventory submission this year. So they have to create a giant spreadsheet of sorts that says where every thing is that they have in their purview and say what material they think it is. After that, they have to go through and notify everybody with a dangerous line, verify them, and then replace them. This is a 10-year plan that we're working on from the government. And this is really the first step into getting the lead out of the ground and getting the public health back to a stable place. So it's a really great mission of making sure that folks have healthy drinking water. Our kids are set up for success in schools. We're doing proper sampling techniques and that we're using technology along the way to power it.
That's really exciting. I feel like if I didn't know about 120 Water, I'd expect a lot of people would be doing this themselves, doing this manually. I'm sure that, it takes a lot of work, and really in terms of having that right infrastructure and the knowledge, the expertise, it's really critical for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the kicker we have as well is in the nation we live in, all of our states get to do the customized version of this regulation, right? So every state is required for different state to state. So not only are we up against this from the EPA, the federal level, but we're also working on this from a state by state and a utility by utility level, where there's lots of customization, lots of particular things that one state might need to know, but the other state wants to know something else. And finding a way to build a standardized, scalable platform along with that pattern has definitely been a rewarding challenge.
Definitely. No, and I think that's, really a good segue. I'm curious, when on the product and solution side of things, what are the main challenges you're currently facing today in your role?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is, bringing technology to a non-technical industry, right? So to tell you a little bit about our basic customers, we have customers in our platform that didn't have an email address before they signed up with us. We have folks that are also still using BlackBerries for their general communication and managing all of their communications back and forth. These folks are being put up to a new standard for regulation this year of having to adopt technology. And so not only are we introducing this to a new industry, but we're introducing technology to a user base that isn't used to it. So think folks that are very comfortable in platforms like Microsoft Word and Excel, where we live more in a Google Docs world nowadays. So it's that transition of not only bringing the industry up to being, bringing through that digital transformation in drinking water, but it's also how do we train the individual folks on the basics of technology so that we can build adoptable products that we're releasing. That's a big challenge. But I think the other one that we touched on earlier is, being able to migrate as a services company more into a product company, right? There's a lot of knee-jerk reactions that can happen when you are a services company. For example, putting due dates on product requests and communicating with customers on what the expectations are that product will build before talking with product. And that's a big difference that we're setting as a product team here at 120 Water is, we have a general view of all of our customers and what they want and the problems to be solved. And so being a part of that conversation and being a partner with them, not just somebody at the end of the ticket flow, is a new pattern that we're trying to push amongst our team. It's very helpful for our team. But again, bringing back those non-technological folks, they're just saying, who is product? Why would I want them on my call? I want to talk to my success manager who knows what I'm trying to get to. So it's not only bringing the tech folks up to speed of how to use technology, but it's also how do we get our business to move along with being a product-led company instead of a services-led company.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we are definitely really seeing that shift as well. I think there's kind of, I guess you could say, this older paradigm of project management where everything is more focused on like a delivery date. Whereas now there's really this need for product management, where again, you mentioned, product led companies really understanding the customer holistically, the insights, what they're looking for. And really, I love what you said about partnership, where it's more than just like an engagement. It's really around that partnership and working together with your customers.
You got it. Absolutely. Especially in this time of unknown of moving towards technology and just making sure that we're all moving forward with public health. We like to say at 120 Water that we know a lot about water, but we are not the water experts. Our customers are. So it's critical for us to have that partnership with them. Otherwise, we might be making decisions that are not helpful at the end of the day for them to get their goals across the line with our platform.
Definitely. Are there any like specific products or projects that you're focused on today that you can share a little bit more about?
Yeah. So, talking more about that regulation and what that looks like, I mentioned that it's a 10-year timeline, and that's what we're calling the compliance journey. And that's our real big focus at 120 Water right now. So, what that looks like, so we know that all of the water systems in the nation have to submit that initial inventory by October 16th of this year, 2024. And so, what comes after that journey? After you submit that initial document that says, here are all of my service lines, here's what I think they're made up of, and here's my confidence here. After they go through that, every single water system is going to be responsible for sending out what we're calling customer notices. And so that's, identifying in my example, in Courtney's water system, every location where I've said, hey, this building I think has a lead line, a galvanized requiring replacement line, or frankly, an unknown line, I have to send them a letter and let them know, hey, there's something in your ground that's serving your water that might be dangerous, and we're going to have to do something about it. So that's the next step in the journey. After that, we go through verification, and that's turning those unknown lines into knowns. So for every spreadsheet entry they have where it's this service line, but not sure what it's made of, these water systems are going to be tasked with actually getting in the ground and looking at those pipes and figuring out what the material is to report that back. After we've moved all of the unknowns to knowns, then comes replacements, right? So knowing, hey, this is a lead line. Let's replace this with something with a little bit more healthy, like plastic or iron or stainless steel. Lots of other options that we have there, but that will then complete the 10-year journey. So what we're really looking at as a product and engineering team is what are the tools that our folks are going to need to have to set them up for success for that journey? What's going to save them time? What's going to help them be more in communication with their end customer to understand what the next steps in their project are? How can we help them track those communications and be able to prove that they've sent them? How do we allow their data to be publicly accessible so that folks like you and I can go and check out my water system online and see if I might have a lead line serving my home or not? So really, that's the big project we're working on. And there's lots of little improvements and also some pretty large improvements that are coming through our roadmap to support that. But really, the big theme that we're doing right now as a product team is how do we support these end utilities in this compliance journey to make sure that they have all of the tools that they need to be compliant.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a really big project and really impactful as well. So definitely can see how it's so interesting because you're obviously your product touches with people who are physically, I'm sure, on the ground as well, working with pipes and so on and so forth. So making sure that you have that physical presence as well and making sure that feedback is getting back to the product team is really important.
So critically important. And luckily, we as a product team have set up a really nice way to be able to collect that information. And even if we're not able to act on it immediately, we're able to give all of our different personas the same capability to talk directly with us. And that's creating that partnership, like we talked about, of how did they have trust in us that we're building alongside of their goals. But also, on the other hand, how do we make sure that we're building things that are adoptable and valuable for our business goals in general? So it's definitely a challenge, but it's one that we see a lot of value in and are so proud to be able to take on.
Definitely. And speaking of business goals, that's actually what I'd love to dive into a little bit as well. As a product and solutions leader, what are your main goals and how do they align with your company's overall objectives?
Yeah, that's a good question. So good news is these are changing all the time, just like drinking water. But I can tell you about what we're focused on right now. So how we typically like to outline our business goals is really looking at where we're trying to go as a business long term and then how we attack on those short term, right? So like I've been talking about, we are really moving to be a product focused company and we're looking to stay the leaders in drinking water technology. So that's the overarching goal. And underneath that, the goal that we have with our customers is the ability to help them have a source of truth of all of their drinking water data and to be compliant. So now that we know that those goals of like our business generally, and those aren't going to change, what we're working towards right now is the different objectives from those goals that we call our product vision objectives. So what we do every year is at the end of the year when everybody's going into holiday PTO time and we're doing our end of year finance wrap up, I meet with the executive leadership team and I give them a quick overarching view of everything that happened the past year. And then we have a really deep conversation of what are the things that we want to focus on for the next calendar year and what do those look like, right? So not necessarily, hey, I want this new dashboard or I want this new feature, but this is an area that we need to focus on and we need to make sure is a part of our product roadmap because it's a part of our market strategy. It's a part of our adoption strategy, whatever it may be. So for this year, particularly, we have 4 objectives that we've been working on as business goals, KPIs, things that we're really keeping in mind as we're building everything through the platform. Those are compliance. So like I talked about, making sure that our platform is going to give these folks the tools that they need to be compliant with their water quality programs. Innovation is one. So we are the leaders in drinking water technology. How do we stay there? How do we stay a step ahead of our customers, understand their problems, understand their jobs so well that we're able to think proactively and build tools for them that will be innovative and helpful for them and solve problems, frankly, that they don't know that they have. Also looking at communications, right? So if you think about the way that you talk with your water provider at your home, I'm sure you don't talk to them often. You might get a bill every month. You might have a dashboard where you can see some information, but you typically don't think of them as the most openly communicative folks with you. So what we're looking to change there is how do we allow water systems to better and communicate with their end customers, but how do we also allow them to communicate with their state primacy agencies, right? The folks who are in charge of making sure that they're doing the right things to be compliant with their drinking water programs. Those are the big 3. And the last one, which is very technically enabled, is scalability, right? So they're growing as a company and we're growing as a user base. And as we're bringing on more customers to digitally enact them into these different tasks they have to make, how do we make sure that we're scaling along with them and not seeing product issues as we grow? So those are the big 4 things that we've been focused on this year. But as we're coming towards the end of the year, we're going to have to redo those and figure out what 2025 goals are going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, I can really see how those goals tie across what you were saying around, the products, the services, and the solutions that you mentioned. I think that it's great to see how those goals definitely tie across the entire business. Curious to learn a little bit more about how you're actually, driving that executive alignment. But one more area that I'd love to also touch upon is just collaboration. So obviously, given that there's all of these very broad goals, how do you collaborate with other teams across your company? And can you share any examples of successful cross-team collaboration?
Absolutely. So I will say that as a product leader, I think there are 2 things that make or break a product manager: empathy and communication skills. Those are really the 2 things that you need in your toolbox to be able to become a product manager and to become a good one. So the way that I think about cross collaboration is constant communication, right? It almost needs to feel repetitive. Our CEO, Megan Glover, likes to say, you have to say something 7 times for somebody to actually hear you. And I can't tell you the amount of times that she's been 100% right there. So we like to think about it from a product and engineering team of how do we stay in constant contact with all of our stakeholders? How do we check in with users? How do we check in with team leads? And how do we check in with folks that are on the ground working with customers so that we're getting all of these different inputs constantly so that those can help inform the decisions that we're making day to day? For example, I have biweekly chats with every single leader in the organization. And so do my product managers. And they're also working with more of the ground level folks who are talking with customers on the phone, maybe reviewing some designs with them. So we're just constantly interacting with them. We're also staying in the weeds as much as possible, right? So If we hear a buzz that our finance team might be looking at a new billing service, we're kind of nudging ourselves in there and saying, hey, what can we do as product to help? So selfishly making sure, what needs to happen as product is being communicated to us, but also offering ourselves up as a service in this internal organization. If you're working on something and it connects with our system, we need to help you there because that's our expertise. That's really critical. But I think just not only the constant communication, but transparent communication, right? So if you have to deliver bad news, making sure you're explaining to that stakeholder why and making sure that they're on the same page as you so that when they go to have those conversations with the end stakeholder or the customer, they understand what's happening so that they can get the customer to understand that decision. And hopefully they'll all be in agreement with that decision, right? That constant communication and being transparent and being vulnerable with those end folks not only helps you build a good internal camaraderie, but also helps you drive more alignment with your product process. If you know that XYZ feature is not going to get done, telling them upfront is better than telling them after it's supposed to be hit with the deadline. So that's kind of our mentality there, constant communication. And luckily we have a small enough team that we're able to stay in touch with everybody right now. But I could see in the future as we scale and we grow, we might have to come up with more asynchronous and creative communication strategies to make sure that everybody has.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about transparency because I do feel like, especially, gone are the days where before I felt like products, maybe people thought they were, in an ivory tower, keeping their cards close to their chest in terms of exactly what's going to be released. I think now, especially for companies that want to be product led, it's really important. And especially as we want product goals to really bubble up to the company overall goals and see how everything ties together. It's really important to be transparent so that all cross-functional stakeholders are involved and really shaping the product strategy.
It's so critically important. And it's important from everybody on leadership all the way to the folks on the ground level. If you have internal alignment on what your goals are and how you're going to get there, and everybody is behind you, you're more likely to hit those goals, right? So for example, if my CSM team understands that product and engineering is working forth, getting all of the different state mapping templates, for example, built out into our platform, and they understand why it's valuable and they understand what it's going to do for our end customer, they're less likely to come to me with more disruptive asks, right? They're more likely to say, hey, customer, I hear that you want this right now, but this is what our product and engineering team is working on right now. I'll give them that feedback, but just know that this is something that we're actively working on. I know that's going to bring value to you. And at the end of the day, that helps us stay on track. It helps drive alignment between us, our stakeholders, and our end customers. And it helps us deliver a better product at the end of the day. So transparency is just so critical in product management.
I love that. Moving on, just talking a little bit about tools and solutions. So would love to just learn a little bit more around what tools your teams currently use to support the work that you're doing and the objectives and goals you're trying to accomplish.
Yes. So I am very fortunate to say that we have a very hefty product and engineering toolbox over at 120Water. And I know I'm biased, but I think it's almost like the perfect toolbox that we have. So some of my favorite tools I like to use, Jira is one of them. I've used lots of other ticketing systems and project management tools. And there's just something about the clunkiness of Jira that just really helps me get the job done. They might have some heavy UI flows here and there, but the functionality of Jira is really what you need to manage those complex and multi-channeled engineering workflows. Outside of Jira, we also use Productboard. I've been using Productboard since 2018, and I've always described it as a product manager's brain in an application, right? So always explaining to people what product management is a challenge. But once you get across that, understanding the value of Productboard is very easy because you understand that in product management, things are coming at you left and right at 100 miles an hour. How do you organize all of those things? How do you make sure that cross collaboration is happening between all of your folks? And how do you make sure to have all of that information in a way that's visually impactful? That's really what we get from the value of Productboard. In terms of design, we love to use Figma. I'm no designer, you can ask my team, but the flexibility of being able to build in Figma, share it in dev mode using Fig Jamboards, we're big Figma fans over at 120Water. On top of those big three, we also like to use Confluence. We also use Google Docs peppered in there because sometimes you can't do without a good Google Doc. I love using Full Story. It's one of my best kept secrets in product management to really understand what your users are doing and how to make a better platform for them. And then we use some really good enablement tools like Loom for recording videos. We use an application called ConfigCat for feature flagging our features as they go out to production. And then some of your generals like Lucidchart. We use an application called AppQues for in-app prompts. And then unfortunately, we use Excel as well. Excel is what the core customer base of ours is using to manage their data. So we unfortunately have to use it to understand their pain. And I very much understand that pain now. So that's what's
That's
in our
awesome.
toolbox.
No, that's a really robust tools chest. I mean, it's awesome to hear that you're able to use all of these different solutions to really, build the best product and solutions. One thing that you mentioned about product board, I love what you said about being the product manager's brain. That's actually the first that I've heard, but it makes so much sense because it really is what you said about all of this feedback coming in and like kind of like thoughts coming into your brain and figuring out how you're able to prioritize what to do next, so on and so forth. So I love that analogy and I'm definitely going to use that one as well.
It's the best one I found. And I mean, you're exactly right. So before I had product board, right, I had all of these different sticky notes on my desk. I was known as the sticky note girl because there were so many little tidbits of, hey, this customer said this. I got this Slack message. I have to remember to update this ticket in Jira. So many things that were constantly coming in. And on top of the deep thinking you have to do as product managers, that is just an ever sinking problem that you have. So being able to put all those things in one place and know that it's asynchronously running and I'm still collecting all my feedback, even though I'm in deep thinking mode, is such a gift as a product manager. So it really is just a fabulous tool.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again for being a product board customer. Curious, as a product leader, how has product board helped you and your team today?
Yeah, a lot of different ways. So one, it really helps with cross-organizational alignment, right? So I can't tell you the number of times I've had somebody send me a message and say, hey, I'd love to know where this thing is, or I'd love to know when the delivery of this is expected to be. And being able to just share a link with them that has all the details, all of the historical comments, and all of the customer feedback tied to it really just gives you the full picture and helps me answer less questions, which helps me save time, right? So that's a big win. The other win we have is it really helps us align with our ELT, right? Typically, working with leadership and product is not something that anybody looks forward to. But with using Product Board, I found that it's able to be a lot smoother because we have this really nice visual of all of the things we have on our board, right? So in this switch of coming from a services company to a product company, there's a cross-company understanding that needs to be had of what product is working on and what that means, right? So if we're working on this project, how long is that going to take? It might be one page of functionality, but there's more that goes into just coding it, right? It's understanding the problem, understanding the user impact, understanding how it affects permissions, states of the different environments. There's all types of things that go into product management that nobody really understands. And so having the ability to surface that into product board so you can see, I'm asking for this, but these are all of the steps that go into that, not only helps us align on what we're doing, but it helps us align on how we're going to do it and when we can expect it to be delivered. It really has been something that has helped us help our team think like product managers, which is critical to being a product-led organization.
Yeah, no, that really resonates. I think, as you mentioned, there's so many companies today that are looking to move toward digital transformation or they're on that digital transformation journey. And I think a lot of it is just being more transparent and showing exactly how that process is being run. So I love your example, what you mentioned with just that general transparency with the ELT, showing roadmaps, dependencies, understanding exactly what is driving the product roadmap and linking it out to like customer feedback. All of that I feel like is really important when it comes to just driving alignment with leadership.
And it's so important. If you don't have alignment with leadership, you don't have alignment anywhere, right? So understanding that from a ground level all the way up to the executive leadership is just critical to product success. And I'm just happy to say that we're not perfect, but we've definitely got a good groove going as an engineering product team.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I know no one's ever perfect. And it's one of those things where I think it's also just a process and a journey, right? It's like crawl, walk, run, where you're going through this transformation and it's going to take time.
Absolutely. And you
Also,
know what? I think if you really look where we were a year ago, we've made a lot of progress there, but like you said, there's always room for improvement.
definitely. Curious. So, how has product, when you think about like the product development life cycle, how has product board helped you drive the life cycle today? And are there any examples that you can give?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the way that it helps us the most is by being that source of truth, right? So, like I was saying with the sticky notes, as a product manager, it can be very overwhelming to have all of these different inputs coming at you at 100 miles an hour with different priorities and different pieces of feedback with different levels of customers. And it's just a big fat mess, right? So, having the ability to put everything together into one place is really helpful. And one of the most impactful examples I can give of that is as we're ramping up to support our customers in this compliance journey, we have brought on a part-time product manager who is just more helping us with some smaller execution projects that need to get across the line by October of this year. And she started last week. And I can tell you she's been here for only a week and she already has a requirements document outlined from a project I had built in Productboard that's been sitting there for a year. And that sounds all good and handy, but good news is I didn't do anything for that. All I did was I built the feature out of Productboard, connected all the feedback to it for that we've gotten historically over customers. And when she logged on, I was able to just hand her that feature from Productboard, and she was able to really dissect that problem and understand what we're trying to do, what is the problem, who are the users that are affected by this problem, and then make some solution calls to be able to really outline what we should do about it. So I think that's the biggest example of success and how we're able to, really make sure that we're supporting our product management team with Productboard and having everything in one place so that we can move faster and get things to our customers faster at the end of the day.
Yeah, I can definitely relate as well as a product marketer, working with product teams. As soon as I understand, what's on the roadmap and I really want to dive into a feature, it gives me the opportunity to see exactly why we're building what's on the roadmap and then reach out to customers for quotes and just really getting more into the context, which has really helped me as a PMM just shape how we message and position whatever we plan on launching. So I can definitely relate in terms of that onboarding and really getting up to speed with, digesting that source of truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really, the delivery side is just as important as the investigative side, right? Like, how are you making sure that everybody knows who to tell about this, right? How do you know what customers have asked for this feature? How do you know what use cases or personas are going to be impacted the most so that you can individually, as a CSM, a product marketer, a support engineer, be able to communicate that with everybody else in the company? It's really, really powerful to be able to segment it and make it universally valuable for all of these different stakeholders internally that we have.
Definitely. Curious, when it comes to our platform, what are some of the key features that you couldn't live without?
Ooh, insights is definitely the one. The way that I describe that to my team when I onboard them and show them how to use it is this is my centralized inbox of all of my feedback, right? So back to what we were saying about the different sticky notes and all of these different inputs, having them all in one place is the one thing that I can't live without. Secondarily to that, I think the features board is also something I couldn't live without. Very similar to the feedback, but all of the different feature ideas, all of the different problems to solve, they're growing every day. And as our leader, Brian likes to say, our engineering and product pipeline is only this big, and we can only fit so much through it at one time. And we're constantly getting feedback. How do we prioritize it properly? How do we make sure that the right things are moving through the right time? So being able to have a backlog, if you will, of all of those features and to be able to weigh them by different metrics and different objectives that we want to measure as a team is so valuable because not only does that help us see the full picture of everything that's been asked of us, but it also helps us understand, how do we really drive this forward for our customers to bring more value? And then how do we communicate that properly so that we're making the best decisions as a product team and building the best products at the right time for the end consumers? It really just really helps us understand here's all of the things on the table, but these are the ones that we need to focus on. And here's why.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Both great features within the platform. Um, Curious, when it comes to just innovation as well, any product board helps support your team's ability to innovate. I'm assuming just gathering the insights, new learnings, and any recent releases or launches you'd be able to share, or any team wins recently on the solutions team.
Yeah, yep, that's a good one. So one of our biggest releases that we've had recently is a new fancy dashboard for our state users. And so what that has really done is it allows so think we're serving our water systems, right? But all of our water systems report up to a state. So Citizens Energy Group that serves me serves up to Indiana. Indiana is a customer of ours. So we recently released a new dashboard in our application that allows them to see aggregate metrics of what their submission period looks like. So who submitted, who has not, who has a certain percentage of unknowns that we know, again, will have to be transferred to unknowns. What is the general material makeup of your entire state? And then being able to see that on a heat map level and directly see more information about a particular water system is something we released last week. So happy to show that that was something that was, I think, about 6 months of research that we had to identify and go through 3 different rounds of designs to be able to finalize that and get that out to our customers. That was a big success story because we actually had to use some outsourced development to get that across the line. And anybody who's in product management who hears outsourcing sometimes might scoff at the idea. But by the way that we set up our communication and our scoping process with those partners, this was the most successful outsource development project I've ever seen. And it's really because we were able to put together all of the different pieces of inputs that we had at the touch of our fingertips in Productboard and hand it over to them with really nice requirements, really nice design, and able to get that across the line for our customers in a really timely manner. So I think that was the biggest success story that we've had. But another one anecdotally to add to that is, so when I started here at 120Water, like I was saying, we were a services company, and everything that had anything to do with product and engineering was immediately a support ticket. So you want a new feature? Great. Submit a support, put a due date on it. You have a bug? Great. Put a ticket in. You have a customer that needs a new account. Anything that needed to happen went immediately through our support queue. And I bet you can imagine that made a big, giant bottleneck in our process. And so what we were able to do is to inject the Productboard insights capability from using the Slack integration, using the Google Chrome plugin, and just using it natively by giving our stakeholders contributor access. And so what we're able to do is just really funnel all of that through our insights and have it in one place so we don't have that problem anymore. And so from that, we were able to reduce our new tickets week by 26% for our engineering team. It also reduced our backlog a lot by being able to take out all of those feature enhancements that more live on the product side, not on engineering, and give our engineers a little bit of breathing room in Jira. So both the insights launch that we had last week and our really big improvements to our support process, I think, are 2 big things that we've seen with success.
That's awesome to hear, and great to hear. That success was driven through Productboard. Appreciate you sharing. Speaking about just measuring success overall, how do you measure success today in your role, and what are some metrics or KPIs you're focused on?
That's a good one. So with every product organization, they are ever changing. But things that I'm focused on right now is, like we talked about, really making sure that the product team's goals and what we're aligned on is exactly what the business is aligned on. We are moving in lockstep with our leadership team and with our business and our board to make sure that our product is supporting where we're trying to go as a company. It's really asking ourselves the question of, does the business know what we're building, how we're building it, and why we're building it? If they don't, then something's wrong there. We also look into, is our product supporting our customers' journeys and the goals that they're trying to solve, right? So we could be building the coolest, sexiest features, but it might not be having the impact for our customers that we need to have as a business. So making sure that everything that we ship out is something that's going to have a large impact. It's going to save somebody time. And at the end of the day, it's going to impact one of our end business goals or one of our customers' goals that we're working to solve with them in this period of time. We also like to look at, does our team, the product and engineering team, feel enabled to execute on these projects. And I think that's one that's sometimes forgotten by product leaders. It's really important to make sure that you have the alignment in the business, but it's just as important to make sure that your team feels enabled to act on those. So making sure that they understand the why, making sure that they get those updates of, hey, I know we're talking about this and this is our project, but I had XYZ leader come to me and bring up this strategy. I think that's something we need to pull into those requirements there. And just making sure that your team is just as enabled as you are as the leader to make those decisions to make the highest quality product possible. And really, I think at the end of the day, if I were to put one metric at what I measure myself on is, am I saving my stakeholders time? And not even just customers, but stakeholders, right? Am I saving our support team time by reducing the amount of manual things that they have to do in our platform? Am I reducing our customers' time of what they have to do in the platform to be compliant this year? Am I saving our business time by really executing on those goals of what we need to do to follow our customers' journey to make sure that we're building the best drinking water platform possible? So all of those things all boil down to saving folks time. And I think that's the one thing that is really, really indicative of what I do as a product manager.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think saving time is definitely a really great high level goal that a lot of companies these days are trying to help their customers save. So,
Yeah, it seems to be the common denominator across all, right? Like Salesforce, for example, saving you time and managing all of your information. 120Water, saving you time and managing all of your data and all of the things that have to do with compliance and communication. Netflix, saving you time from having to send DVDs in the mail and receive them back, right? So at the end of the day, it's really easy for us to tie technology, no matter what industry it is, to time. And I think that's the goal of it, is how do we save the human race time by using automation and technology to get things done faster?
I love that. Awesome. Well, I'd love to also learn a little bit, as you mentioned, as a product leader with over a decade of experience, what are some personal insights or tips you'd like to share with aspiring product leaders?
Yeah, that's a good one. As I talked about before, I think the most crucial thing for product leaders to have in their toolbox is empathy. If you are not able to get on the ground level with somebody and understand their problem, why it is a problem, and how it needs to be solved, you're not going to be able to build good products. So I think really understanding, what is happening and how can I help you is a critical part of being a good product manager. I also think, and this is a very common product management insight, making sure that you're getting to the bottom of what the problem is and not what they want the solution to be, right? So I can't tell you how many times in my career I've had a customer come to me and say, hey, Courtney, I want this capability. I need you to build this for me. And my first question is always, well, what? And I ask that about 6 more times until we get to a different question. So understanding the root of what they're asking me not only helps me further understand what they're trying to accomplish, but it also helps me draw these invisible strings to other pieces of feedback I've heard. So if Grant comes to me and brings me some examples of, hey, I want this, this, and this, because this is my problem, and Sam comes to me and he had the same problem, but a different solution, if I didn't ask that question, I might think that I'm being proposed with building 2 different solutions, which could take way more engineering time. But if I take the time to really understand what the root of the problem is and then solution from there, I'm able to do 2 birds, 1 stone, maybe 4 birds with 1 stone, and knock out a lot of problems with one solution and make it more holistic, make it more adaptable, and make it more valuable for my business too, right? So that's a really big one. And the last thing I would say is just to be kind to yourself. Product management is hard, and I don't think that's something that we talk about a lot in this industry. And it's really easy to make mistakes in products. I've made mistakes. I've shipped products that weren't ideal and we had to revert and bring back and make changes to. And that's okay. I think as long as you are being honest with yourself of, hey, this is what happened. I messed up and I'm going to own that. And this is what I'm learning from it. It's all you really need to do from that. As a product leader, one of the most common compliments I get is that I'm really good at speaking up when I did something wrong or when I don't know something. And I think that's almost a superpower, right? Of being able to be transparent and be on that level and outline, hey, that is a mistake. This is why that happened, but this is why it's not going to happen again. not only builds, yourself as growth, but builds more trust amongst your stakeholders so they know what you're thinking and they know that you're a human just like them at the end of the day. So those three, I think, are the big ones: empathy, understanding the problem, and just being kind to yourself.
I really love that. I mean, all of them are great. Being kind to yourself. I agree. I feel like product management is definitely one of, if not the hardest job at a company. And I feel like oftentimes PMs feel like that they have the world on their shoulders with a lot of pressure. So I think that's really a good reminder for folks that are tuning in and listening in to definitely be kind to yourself.
Absolutely. I think the grind culture is something that's really caused a lot of turnover in the product management industry. I don't remember the numbers, but I remember reading a study that product management was one of the biggest industries in technology with the highest rate of turnover. And I'm not surprised to hear that one bit. But I think if we all understood the common goals we're working towards, how we're working on getting them, and what we're learning along the way as humans, hopefully that turnover would really reduce.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Great. Is there any other particular piece of advice that has helped you personally throughout your career?
Yes. Two things come to mind when I'm asked that question. First is my team is going to laugh at this when they hear me say this, but more of a mantra that I say to myself as a product manager. The mantra is your product is only as diverse as the minds behind it. So whenever somebody comes to me and says, hey, should we get this person on the phone? Should we ask them for their feedback? Should we show them this design? The answer is always yes, because if we just build a product and it's only my mind behind it, we're not getting far. But if we're able to talk to all our stakeholders and understand their goals, their feedback, and what they think about this product that we're building, the success of it at the end of the day is going to be way higher than if it's just me. So I think constant collaboration, don't be afraid of that learning, right? So sometimes people like to call it constructive feedback. I like to call it learnings. What are you learning from these folks? What are the things that you didn't know when you set out to scope out this feature? So your product is only as diverse as the minds behind it. And secondly, I always ask this question. It's very simple. But whenever I'm asked, this is a problem, I'm not quite sure what to do about it. My question is, well, have you talked with the stakeholder about it? And the answer is usually no. The stakeholder could be the engineer working on something, a CSM who is working with the customer themselves, or somebody on our executive leadership team. The question of, have you talked with them about it? Do you know what they think about it? Is really a grounding question. And mostly when I ask that question, I see folks go, oh, no, I haven't. I should. And I'm like, yeah, you should. And then we'll talk about it. But you need to ask them first before you come to me, because they're the stakeholders and they're the ones that determine the success. So your product is only as diverse as the minds behind it, and always making sure that you talk to your end stakeholders and communicate to make sure that what you're building is up to snuff of what you're expected to build.
Definitely. Love those two. I mean, I feel like they definitely go hand in hand, and I'm going to remember that mantra. I really like that one.
It's a good one.
Awesome. Well, just to wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners? And how can folks connect with you to learn more about your work?
Yeah, I think the last thing I would share to all the other product managers out there is I love working with aspiring product managers. And I know that there are lots of other product leaders out there that are in the same vein. And mentorship is so helpful when you're getting your footing in product management. Understanding what works, what doesn't in this new industry that doesn't have a rule book, right? Understanding what works for folks and what doesn't, and having somebody in your corner that might not necessarily be in your organization, but that understands what you're going through is so helpful. I've had at least 3 or 4 different mentors throughout my career, and I'm still in touch with every single one of them. And every single one of them has helped me through a different growth pattern in my career, right? So understanding if I wanted to be product management versus product marketing, understanding what industry I want to go through, stepping into leadership, people management, having somebody in your corner that isn't directly tied to your organization that can mentor you is really, really helpful. So I would say don't ever be afraid to reach out to some folks on LinkedIn and just say, hey, I know I don't know you, but here's my resume. Would you mind to take a peek at it? You might be surprised about the responses that you get. And in terms of connecting with me, I'm on LinkedIn. So check me out at Courtney Arnott on LinkedIn, or you could check out 120Water on LinkedIn or go directly to 120water.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Courtney. This was such a great conversation. It was awesome to have you. Thank you for being a product board customer, and thank you for just sharing all of your wisdom with everyone here. It's really insightful, and thank you for the work that you're doing with 120 Water and the impact that the company's really having on all of us. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you for having me today. It's a joy. And like I said, I love working with other product managers. So it was just a joy to be here today. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you.